Okay, so turn 9 it is. Let's light up the party with some fireworks all over Japan. So, time for the reinforcements first. Yes, it is unbelievable we made it through 1943. We may have been unlucky with combats, but at least we have been lucky in the regard that he has not drawn either Tokyo Rose or Tojo Resigns. So, this will be our deployable reinforcements. These ones right here are delayed: New York, Missouri, Shangri-La, and the Marine Air Wing. So we can deploy these ones. I remind you, these ones, the B-29 long-range bombers, are never delayed. So along with those that were delayed from last turn, let's place all these units. First of all, we are placing our long-range bombers in China box. Next long-range bomber goes to Admiralty Islands. Okay, more Australians in Kepang. Marines division onto Batavia. Let's start invading Malaya possibly. Casablanca onto Admiralties, as well as Hancock. And some replacements on top of that. The eliminated Intrepid will be deployed to Shilashap, rather Admiralties. Indomitable onto Kepang. I remind you, this is turn 9, so I get a Commonwealth Naval replacement as well. Next one will be on turn 12. So it is sent over to Kendari. No ground replacements to conduct, no ground units to replace, and no air units either. So over to the Japanese. So let's see where he places the Ozawa headquarters, which he had sent to the turn track. He will be sent to Taihoku, Formosa, rather Tainan. So from here he can oversee things a little bit better, we can believe. Okay, Okinawa then, so that he can defend the Truk. So as for his reinforcements, he gets this army, which goes to Okinawa along with the headquarters, and he's also got one air division and Amagi. Okay, the air division on to Bangkok and Amagi on to Tainan. Now, as you may notice, he's only going to get 2 infantry reinforcements on turn 10, and that's it. The state is ours, otherwise it's our time to sign. So no replacements on part of the Japanese. He will maintain his 1 ground replacement and his 1 naval replacement and his 3 air replacements for the next turns. And over to us. We've got the submarines as well, which at this stage are automatic. It's turn 9, so no matter what I roll, he will be losing his amphibious shipping point and 1 card, so he is left with 4 cards. And even if the subs weren't enough, we've got the strategic bombing. Now, let's see if we can strategically bomb Japan. And yes, we can. Reminding, strategic bombing would only fail on a roll of 9, actually on a roll of 8 because of this event, high altitude interceptors. And in that case, my B-29 long-range bomber would lose 1 step, unless I am controlling an airfield within 5 hexes of Tokyo. So for the most part, it's essential for the Allies to control Iwo Jima, unless in this case I've got other priorities and I do not care so much about losing 1 step. Now, most importantly, strategic bombing creates this 1 marker, which means at the end of the turn, at the political will segment, I will be gaining 1 political will. So actually, all of our problems and all of our suffering ends here. Because even if he plays Tojo Resigns and drops the political will to 0, at the end of the turn, I will gain 1 political will. So, unless I really mess up that badly and lose all my carriers or something, we're not going to lose the political will. That's it. And of course, progress of war is much easier now. So, within all that, we have to keep making progress and keep eliminating Japanese defenses. So, 2 passes for the Japanese. And let's go. 7 cards in our hand, let's see what we've got. Now, the thing is, a reshuffle has been conducted thanks to Soviets invade Manchuria. So these are the cards that have been removed from game and will not be reshuffled again. And these are the cards we ended up drawing after Australian Coastwatcher has been sent to Future Offensive queue. So now we've got Operation Watchtower plus all the inter-service rivalry escapes in the world. So 2 cards that break inter-service rivalry. At last, maybe we can play with some strategic agreement in this game after such a long time. And the thing is, we ended up drawing both of those. So if we do play both of those, and if afterwards he puts us again into inter-service rivalry, then we are done for. I don't think we will ever escape it again. So these cards, both of them, give the allies the option to discard a card and replace it with a card from the discard pile. The thing is, while I want to escape the inter-service rivalry right now, I cannot make any value out of this effect. So what I thought of doing is playing Operation Watchtower, which is my surprise attack card, and then reclaiming it from the discard pile, because why not? And what I further thought of doing was saving this one card as a future offensive in order to not allow the Japanese to put us into inter-service rivalry again. If they do that, I will use this card and possibly even reclaim Operation Watchtower again from the discard pile. So I'm thinking of playing a total of 3 Operations Watchtower, and I guess at least 1 or 2 of those attacks will indeed be a surprise. And at this stage, because of the +3 in air-naval combat and the +3 of the surprise attack, this will be an automatic 6, so no matter what we roll, we will be doing full damage. So let's see, starting with Operation Watchtower, forcing the Japanese to play any reaction cards they might have in hand. And I assure you they should have many, because they drew all their juicy military operations cards earlier, so they are left with all reactions in the world now. So Anzac it is, and we're using 6 activations with Anzac, reminding this is a logistic value of 5, a maximum of 1 ground unit may be activated, the rest have to be air and naval units. So we are still in inter-service rivalry though, so that's why we're using Anzac, which can activate both American Navy or American Army plus any Commonwealth units, because for the rest of the turn inter-service rivalry will be broken and we might be able to better use the Americans. So Australian Corps, Indomitable, Warspite, the long-range bombers from Lae, 1 more long-range bomber from Admiralty Islands, and 1 more from Hollandia. So let's see what we do with those. We use Indomitable and this core actually to invade Balikpapan. Okay, that's 1 more resource hex of the Japanese within Dutch East Indies, 2 ASPs for that. And that's our first battle onto Balikpapan. We've got the long-range bombers moving to Sarong and declaring a battle onto Ryujo. So these 2 will attack Ryujo. And in the meantime, Warspite plus the long-range bomber will attack Chuk. So these will be my combats. I admit there's a mistake here. I should have brought the Indomitable inside Balikpapan, so as both to provide the naval unit modifier for naval units in the hex, and to prevent the Japanese from reacting and bringing naval units inside and sending my amphibious assaulting units back without a fight. Now, we've got 8 factors here to possibly take down Ryujo, and 18 factors here with these long-range bombers. So while they provide their bonus for the American air units in 1944, the +3, they also provide 4 more factors to make it a total of 18. 10 would Shafis to reduce this one, and the remaining 8 would eliminate Kamikaze. So let's see what the Japanese reaction to that is. So he gets it that I might have an even better surprise waiting, but he will still cancel it. In the end, my mistake didn't matter, because he is playing Halsey's Typhoon as an event. This is a special weather card. It allows him to draw 1 strategy card. It is a one-time use, then it's removed from the deck. And if I had a CA or DD, Destroyer Naval Unit, activated for the offensive, it would be reduced if it were full strength. So the offensive is cancelled as a whole, which might mean he's short of reaction cards if he was to expend Halsey's Typhoon on this one, because otherwise a reaction would suffice, and personally I would have saved the weather card for an even better operation, the likes of Operation Iceberg or whatever, with a ton of like 11 activations for the US. So let's hope he's out of reaction cards now. And he's playing Mahatma Gandhi for operations. Now these are cards that drop the India level when India is about to revolt, but nothing like that is going to happen in this particular game. So 3OC operations. Ozawa is activated and he keeps retreating. In the end, it will be South Seas headquarters being activated, and he is taking some units from Kwajalein and from Truk and from Eniwetok. So in the end, without a fight, we are going to have our way in the Central Pacific. The units like Kamikaze are retreating from this wasteland of remote islands. Kamikaze is retreated to Busan, this army on the Ulithi. The Eastern District Army will, interestingly enough, amphibiously invade Iwo Jima. This is an airfield, so yeah, no chance of a strategic naval transport. This will have to be an amphibious invasion, spending one amphibious shipping point. And for reasons I mentioned earlier, he wants to defend Iwo Jima. And then he's garrisoning Ominato as well, and Qingdao. So, full retreat from the Pacific to defend Japan is the name of the game. So our ASPs were not expanded after all because our operation was cancelled due to weather issues. So this division is in supply again, miraculously, without doing anything to support their situation. And now we are playing the Australian Coast Watchers as operations. So maybe no better usage for this one, so we are using Indomitable and the Australians again with Anzac. And with this movement allowance of 5, we are invading Balikpapan. Now this might not seem like the most important thing in the world, conquering this resource hex, but I shall remind you of two things. First of all, if I can retake all these resource hexes plus Medan, then Dutch East Indies are liberated, which means one political will, and even if Tojo resigns is played, even if I lose my carriers or I don't know, the progress of war is not achieved, I will not be losing to political will. And there's a further issue that I am thinking of, that later on I might have to sacrifice some political will myself by recklessly assaulting Japan with my ton of ground units. And if I lose my ground units, my entire ground force in combat, then this will mean one more political will loss. So I might want to have a surplus of political will, because nobody knows, the strategic bombing might also fail at some point with +1 diral modifier for the high altitude interceptors. Chances are it might fail. And another thing is that, you know what, it doesn't hurt to eliminate some Japanese ground units, because as I have mentioned several times already, I have to eliminate his naval and air forces and practically also eliminate his ground forces, because whatever survives will be transferred to Japan sooner or later and will have to be dealt with. So why not eliminate some ground forces first? Especially since these are the most vulnerable, these are the ones he is in the most shortage of. And since I had no better use for this card, the Australian Coast Watchers, the 1 OC value, and I'm saving my surprise attacks to kindly destroy his navy and air force at the end of the turn. Japanese reaction to that. Intel is 7, so we're talking surprise here. And because of the automatic 1 result, again, reminding you, +2 if I am the only one player with naval units in the battle hex, +2 if I'm the only one with air and carrier units, and -1 for jungle. So a net total of +3, which means my 1 result is automatic. My 12 strength Australians will eliminate these Japanese guys. And he's rolling a 2, which is modified to 5, because I used the amphibious assault and he had units in the hex. So with a 5 he is dealing a 1, which is insufficient to deal any damage. So they suffer that loss, and we are grabbing 1 progress of war hexes and the resources of Balikpapan. One more thing I will remind you is that in the unlikely case he plays Tojo resigns and we draw Soviets invade Manchuria again, I might as well need to get all those resources and leave Japan with 1 resource so that I can win the A-bomb victory. So 1 pass from the Japanese, and we are directly moving to Allied card play number 3. So we are kind of playing solitaire at this stage. We've got some unbelievable value out of Volker Runke's new game. Yeah, funnily enough, this card is the new upcoming game by Volker Runke. and I have been glad to have been part of this playtesting team of this game. It's a very fun one. Hope you enjoy that, and hopefully I might deliver a tutorial of that soon enough. So our card is a minor Allied victory in Europe. So at long last, our war in Europe situation is positive. This means two things. First, that these guys will probably land the Pacific at some point, no further delays. And second, now we will not have delayed reinforcements. So we will be receiving these delayed ones, and on turn 10 we shall also be receiving all this juicy stuff. At last we will be on track with our schedule to win the war at the Pacific. Who would believe? The thing is, if there were army units here, they would be delayed if we were in inter-service rivalry. There aren't any of those, but in any case we are also intending to break the inter-service rivalry in this turn. So, Japanese card play number 3. One more pass. He passes and we are sending a card to the future offensive queue. As promised, a card that breaks inter-service rivalry. Japanese card play number 4. Now he is out of passes. He's left with 3 cards plus 1 in his future offensive. And he will be playing fuel shortads. This is not his future offensive card. This is one of the 3 cards in his hand. So this will be played as operations anyway. So it will be Ozawa again with a total of 5 activations. And he's taking the 31st Army from Truk, also the 51 AF from Tarakan, the Air Forces from Jolo, HA from Manila, and Soryu from Samara. Now, the 31st Army is retreated to Sasebo to prevent us from landing onto this hex and possibly establishing some zone of influence situation around Japan. HA will also move to Sasebo, Soryu onto Swato, Chinese coastland, Wenchou and Aparis, so he's falling back. And now, after all these stalling actions, all this necessary housekeeping activity, it might be time to start trying to break the Japanese defensive perimeter. Now, at long last, all this is empty to take, and of course we can send the South Seas headquarters to their next turn, but we are not going to be baited by that. It is disastrous to lose Truk early in the game for the Japanese, but right now they can just redeploy it elsewhere. There's nothing that this headquarters provides supply to anymore. So, Operation Chronicle will be our card. This is an interesting one, and if any ground units are landed on an unoccupied one hex island, an allied control marker is placed on all adjacent unoccupied ones. So, for example, at the start of the game, when you are desperate for political will, you can land your units on Maloelap, for example, and get control of all these hexes. Now these issues are long past, so let's see what we do. It's Central Pacific being activated, and because this is an event we get a total of 6 activations. You've got the brigades, you've got Intrepid, you've got Hancock, Casablanca, Bunker Hill and Cowpens, and all these will be activated and declaring battles. We will indeed use the Marines and land at Maloelap so as to get progress of war, control of all these hexes, and then not lose the political will any further. Now, Battle A will be on to Saipan Tinian. So we saw that he's stacking 2 naval units here, and we think this is time to at last take 2 birds with 1 stone. While most of his units are spread around, these ones are stacked together, so this is our chance to deal some concentrated damage, at least we think so. And let's see how he's reacting. He's got the intel, so Ozawa is activated, Yamato is activated, Davao, the air forces, other air forces from Ominato, and Amagi from Tainan. So he's thinking of responding to that, and he's bringing in everything he's got. All of these units joined Battle A, and on top of that he had another surprise for me up his sleeves, which is another kamikaze event. There is no end to them. This is the 3rd kamikaze we will be suffering in this game. So he's drawing a Japanese bonus card, and he's sacrificing 1 step out of Guam, and the losses will go to Hancock and Casablanca. These are my strongest naval units at this stage, the full strength ones, so they will be reduced. Now I'm full of reduced naval units, which might end up being sunk as a whole. So now we've got indeed 40 versus his 67, and let's see what happens. We're rolling a 0, that's a surprise, and he's rolling a whole result. Like the Americans are never going to do something in this game. This is a half result on our part, which means 20 factors of damage, and he's rolling his full 67 factors of damage. 3 times 14 makes 42, 49, 57, and he's good to go to sink all of our navy once more. And with our 40 halved down to 20, we can possibly deal 2 steps of damage, and that's it. Yeah, one minor detail is that Casablanca will be left alive because of the air parity rule. He sunk like 4 of my units because he had 4 ranged units of his own, which is Amagi, Akagi, and the 2 air forces. He lacks the 5th ranged unit to sink Casablanca, but the rest is down to the depth. So this will be our post-battle movement. Easy stuff. Only Casablanca remains, only 1 unit, so no complexities regarding post-battle movement. We are returning this to Kwajalein, and that's it. Now you might go ahead and criticize me for attacking so recklessly with my navy, but the thing is my units were partially full strength and I wouldn't expect a kamikaze, let alone the 0 versus 7 result. So I thought at least my full strength units would prevent my stronger carriers from being destroyed, but you know, kamikaze and stuff. So yeah, 2 casualties on his air forces. He's post-battle moving and playing War in Europe for operations, reminding this is no effect now. This is 1944, so no effect. So operations for that. Ozawa is activated for a total of 5 activations. And we got these 3 units from Bangkok, plus Nazi from Singapore, plus the Essence. And they're moving to Hong Kong, and Swato, and Tokyo, and Cameron. So, retreating continues. Tactical retreat, reorganization, ready to defend our next wave of attacks. Actually, he will end up activating the Korean army and redeploy it back to Japan. So this will be his elite garrison, aimed to defend Japan at all costs. And we're in a funny situation that we may end up losing more political will if we manage to lose all our carriers. That's not an unlikely scenario anymore. We've only got Enterprise, Essex, Baran, and Casablanca. Let's go! We can do that. We can lose those as well. So according to my comments, it has been a fair long since I last visited my favorite theater of this timeline, which is the CBI. Maybe this is the time we do so. Activating SIAC with Mao Tse Tung, 3 operations, rather 3 activations. So we've got the long-range bombers and more long-range bombers. And these will be attacking Nachi. This is a chance to sink 1 more Japanese unit. Let's see. No zone of influence here, so this might as well be a surprise. He needs to roll a 0 to 2 to avoid surprise. So his intel is 8, which means Nachi is automatically eliminated. My post-battle movement will be back onto Dhaka and Akyab. So Japanese card play number 6. This is his next to last card, including his future offensive, which should have been the Kamikaze. So he's playing General Adachi. Now this is a funny one card, an interesting one, because it's got a very rare bonus. Neither the HQ nor the units being activated need to be in supply, but they must be within HQ activation range. So this means that this brave general, while being cornered and surrounded in New Guinea, must to keep fighting while out of supply for a long time. So there are some times where the allies might end up denying all the Japanese units on the map supply, for example by placing zones of influence here and there and cutting off the supply to Japan totally. So this might be a card you want to save for these situations and use that to reactivate possibly South Seas or the South HQ and punish the Americans who will inevitably be overextended at this stage, and pick up some isolated targets of those and destroy some units of theirs, as well as redeploying your air units back onto re-establishing supply. Now, this is a totally different case. He will just be activating Ozawa and some units from Hong Kong, from Saigon, from Palau Islands and Manila. And all these units will be transferred back to Japan, as we would expect. So garrisoning his homeland hexes, making our task harder and harder. So card number 7 on our part. We've got skip bombing and we've got MacArthur. So they're retreating at a faster rate that we can chase them, which is bad. So we will play Douglas MacArthur at this stage, and at last an agreement is reached. Army and Navy will cooperate. For that we discard skip bombing attack, and we are reclaiming Operation Watchtower, as was expected. So he was expecting us to have a worse surprise card, but he wouldn't expect us to have the exact same card. So, last Japanese card play of the day, future offensive on his part, and let's go with that decisive last turn card play. Operation Watchtower, and not only is this the time to eliminate some units, but maybe we can take a lot of those out of supply. For example, if we eliminate this line of Japanese air units, maybe these ones are out of supply, but as I am noting here, because of the placement of the Ozawa headquarters, even if I land at Saigon and eliminate the south headquarters, the AF in Bangkok is still in supply through the land path from Hanoi here, because this is a supply eligible port, of course, and then we've got half a movement point, one more movement point to enter Udon, and then half movement point to reach Bangkok. So because Ozawa is here, now he is in range of supplying this one, so let's take that out of the question. But as I am calculating now, because the Japanese have no Zoe here, maybe I can take this Air Force out of supply. Let's see. Also, this one ground unit will be out of supply and unable to be transferred to Japan, according to my calculation. Now, let's do any cheap damage that we can inflict. Southwest Pacific will be the activating headquarters, and we have saved a couple of units for that purpose. So, Franklin will attack this Air Force. My ground unit will invade Saigon. I remind you, this is the sole ground unit that I can activate for this offensive because of Operation Watchtower. Then we've got Carolina attacking the Air Forces along with Enterprise in Hanoi. So this should be enough, 24 factors to eliminate this one. And actually we are deciding against that and destroying his air forces at Luzon. Now Essex will attack Formosa, or rather Wenchou. Now the thing is, this one is at 10 factors, so I am opting for this one. And this is an army one, which might make a difference in inter-service rivalry situations. Now Massachusetts is attacking here, along with Wasp, so we will also be able to eliminate this one. Now, this is an auto result in all cases, and actually it's a pity that I had to activate this ground unit because I cannot inflict any more chip damage. I don't have more carriers at 10 factors of damage, so if I had one more carrier, the likes of Franklin and Essex class 1, I might be able to also eliminate this one with an auto result. So at this stage we are eliminating everything in our way. Miri falls, Saigon falls, Apari falls, and Wenchou falls. So let's start clearing this map. Post-battle moving. Now, as you might notice, because the air naval combats are so one-sided at this stage, it might even be a serious consideration what I suggested earlier, that maybe the Americans want to inflict some ground casualties earlier on and save the air naval combats for later on in the game where they are enjoying the +3 bonus. But of course I might have overdone it at this one. I may be too far behind to ever catch up in progress and Japanese units elimination. So, supply issues. This one can barely be reached by MacArthur through the gap in Singkalang. Now, this is a rare situation where if there was an air unit in Singapore, the existence of a zone of influence of either of these two units would preclude the zone of influence of the other unit by rendering out of supply. This is an example that very rarely occurs in real games, but if there was a plane here, then we might be able to encounter it, and we would resolve it by rendering the Japanese off supply and without a zone of influence. This is the rule. But right now, because there is no plane here, it's simpler. Kwantan is out of supply. Because this is the case, you see, Ozawa is here, and this is diagonally a 12 hex range. So yeah, they are out of supply. And at last, we're getting some political will. We are back to 2. Now, if we can raise it back to 3, which will most likely be the case with our next turn's strategic bombing, and maybe even to 4, then even if we fail some ground operations and end up losing our ground force for some one less political will, then even Tojo resigns will not be able to finish the game. That's the plan. Now, one step lost for Kwantan because of attrition, and game turn goes up to 10. We've got 3 turns to eliminate everything and conquer Japan. Let's see how we're doing. 9 amphibious shipping points, and these may look excessive at this point, but I assure you we will use those to invade Japan. And in the cases where war in Europe drops that far below early and the Americans lose their amphibious shipping points reinforcements, this is a nightmare, not only because of the delays in reinforcements and the difficulties in achieving progress of war without ASPs, but because during the latter part of the game, the Japanese will have fallen back onto Japan, and you definitely need a double-digit number of ASPs to invade all these places. So yeah, I can't imagine what the Americans would do if they were stuck at 3 or 4 or 5 amphibious shipping points at that stage. Now, Allied reinforcements. We've got a strategic agreement, we've got the war in Europe at positive, so every reinforcement will come in time. You got the Marine Air Wing at Saigon, we've got the B-29s at Marcus, we've got Home Richard at Admiralty Islands, we've got Shangri-La, we've got the Marines, we've got Commencement Bay onto Kavieng. Now, funnily enough, we don't have space anymore in Admiralty Islands, and we also need to utilize Kavieng to find space for our ships. Also Saigon. The thing is, one reason I invaded Saigon was this very one, to find space for my naval units and have those in range for the operations. Like, it doesn't help to bring those onto New Guinea and the mandates anymore. I need them close to the battle, and I need them now. I need to occupy ports closer to Japan, like Saipan, and from here launch operations deep into Japan. So this might be a rare situation where I need every single naval unit. Every single one of those will be necessary to complete our conquests. Even possibly this turn 11 arriving one, and maybe even the Commonwealth Naval replacement of turn 12. So Japanese reinforcements time. Funnily enough, we are getting some supply here in Phnom Penh now, because they can be reached by land, and Saigon is supply eligible now. They are within 4 movement points of a supply eligible port. Now they bring their 2 reinforcements in Japan, Kure and Ominato, and they're redeploying the South HQ onto Manila. Now Kwantan is in supply again. So replacement time. And since we've got 2 ground replacements, let's just replace these ones. Who knows, maybe we can utilize those after all and launch some amphibious assault operations until the Americans arrive. However, we ended up deciding against that and restoring the Australians. So 2 naval replacements for us. Intrepid back to Kavieng, ready to receive some more beating. Bunker Hill onto Balikpapan. Let's see if he's got any more kamikazes to sink those again. Now it is time that he uses these Japanese air replacements. The Guamese air forces return to full strength, as well as the Ulithi ones. And the eliminated Japan air units return to Miri. So he's putting me again out of supply, at least temporarily. There's no attrition right now, so if we eliminate this one, we are restoring supply. The submarine Saroto, so he's losing 1 amphibious shipping point. And that's an interesting situation where I have two B-29 long-range bombers, so I can strategically bomb with one or two out of those two. And maybe I want to save one strategic bombing to use that long-range bomber for operations, because if I use it for strategic bombing, it cannot participate in operations for the rest of the turn. But this increases our chances of failing the strategic bombing, of course. And with that, we are ready for an exciting turn. Let's keep setting fire all over Japan. And we shall pause that here, and I shall let me know what you think about this game so far. What are the chances of the Allies winning this war? Let's find out.